rattle through a few further findings from our Delivering Diversity report, which gets more specifically into the question of race and ethnicity. And so these were the challenges that we found in the research. I think for today's debate, I just jumped down towards the bottom. Only 8% in our survey said that resistance from middle managers was a barrier for them. And what we took from this was that because we had some conversations about this sort of issue, the importance of middle management as that pivotal role within the culture. So people haven't been seeing it as resistance per se. If you approach thinking that they are a source of resistance, trying to hold back from change, you may have a more confrontational approach, the one that thinks, okay, they are potential allies, partners, and champions of change, and we need to make it, empower them and enable them to become those champions of change. One of the companies, I think, who we were struck do a really fantastic job in some ways on this was Google. So one example that they offered was to break the silence, to start those conversations, was to bring together groups of managers in mentoring circles. So this program called Activate, senior colleagues with 6 to 7 BAME colleagues, layering in peer-to-peer mentoring as well within that, and a middle-level layer. This was really critical for them because what they found was that having senior leaders fronting diversity initiatives was great for setting the tone at the top and showing that the organisation was committed. But it's very difficult for more junior colleagues to relate to people at that level. Actually having people who are the next level up in the middle was a much more accessible conversation. It was a much more real conversation. And so having next level sponsors, next level role models was a really powerful way of starting to open the conversation. And on that first point about starting conversations and breaking the silence, as I put it, one of the things that they observed was that some cultural groups were less likely to self-promote, less likely to self-nominate for opportunities, just not really in the culture. But that's the culture of Google. So if you came into Google without that tendency, you were likely to sit back, think that your efforts would be noticed, and you would miss the opportunities. So one of the things that they looked to do was then to get middle managers to open that conversation, be more explicit about the culture of the company, how it works, to help BAME Googlers understand those company trends. So from the research, just to conclude, these were our 7 key recommendations. The first was about breaking the silence. I think is going to be really important to say that this is a priority. It's not a flash in the pan. It's not this month's trend that will be gone if you just keep your head down and it'll all blow over. But we need to change the way the organisation works. Changing the story. Something that was incredibly powerful was for organisations to humanise the diversity and inclusion agenda. There is a slight trap, I think, when we talk about data and progression and numbers, that we lose sense of the people that are at the heart of this, the talent. Third point is building in data systems and so forth, so I'll not dwell on that today. I think middle managers come back in again in terms of the power of sponsorship, the next up leadership, making sure that people at all levels are building change. And number 6, can really building inclusive cultures, making sure that diversity and inclusion is real and is tangible in the organisation, and adaptive. Something that we picked up through the project was the importance of cultures that respond to the people who come in. It has to be a two-way conversation, and middle managers are critically important to that. And finally, benchmarking and collaboration. Because I think a lot of organisations are a little bit nervous at the minute about talking about this, groups like ENEI, the Lord Mayor's Appeal, who can facilitate mornings like this, facilitate the sharing of good practice, bring together case study exemplars, really very important, I think, for moving together to get the sort of change we need.